In our previous episode, our boy effortlessly took down two powerful martial saints, completely dismantling two of the world's largest organizations. Along the way, he also picked up some valuable information about the mysterious guide. Now, the scene shifts to a room overlooking the ocean. After spending a whole year inside the dream realm, he finally had the chance to enjoy the sight of crashing waves and warm sunlight, finally giving our boy some peace and relaxation. Behind him, a small water tank sits in the room. With a casual thought, he controls the water using his psychic energy, making it form a smooth arc before gathering it in his palm. Might as well give it a try, he thinks. Taking a slow sip, he nods in satisfaction, saying this isn't just any ordinary water. It's the legendary spirit water from the northern mountains of the neighboring kingdom, said to be the purest in the world. Extracting it alone is a painstaking process, followed by over 100 refinement procedures. Just this small jar is actually worth tens of billions. Having soaked in beast marrow for an entire year, he hasn't eaten a single meal in all that time. Not that he really needs food for energy, for that matter. But anyone who knows our boy knows one thing. Eating is serious business for him. With a snap of his fingers, a steady stream of attendants starts bringing in dish after dish. Before long, the table is piled high with mouth-watering delicacies. Picking up his knife and fork, he can't help but grin. Nothing beats a good feast of meat. Without wasting another second, he digs in. However, he never ended up using the fork and knife. After all, some pleasures in life should never be skipped. Just as he's enjoying his meal, someone enters the room with a fairly large chest. The woman respectfully explains that this is a gift from the Lord God's seal. Opening it up, he finds a large piece of energy crystal weighing exactly 436 grams. Well, Harold sure is thoughtful. Lu Sheng makes a casual remark before wiping his mouth, then stands up leisurely. Before leaving, he tells the woman to inform him once Harold is ready to set off. The scene then shifts to the conference building of the Central Military District, far across the ocean. Seated inside are the 5 marshals, all in high spirits. The latest and most reliable intelligence confirms Lu Sheng is safe and is about to return. The Central Marshal is eager to know if they can establish contact with him. The Eastern Marshal, however, shakes his head. For now, reaching out is impossible. They can only wait for Lu Sheng to initiate communication, and his exact location remains unknown. Still, based on their assessments, he is likely somewhere on the other side of the world. With confirmation of our boy's safety, everyone breathes a sigh of relief. Now they began planning whether they should send participants to the upcoming World Grandmaster Tournament. The Eastern Marshal reflects on the past. Every tournament, the military has sent their best elites in hopes of producing a martial saint. However, with losses piling up each time, yet they have never wavered in their efforts. But things are different now. With Lu Sheng's rise as a future martial saint, maybe this brutal trial is no longer necessary. However, not everyone shares this sentiment. 2 of the marshals firmly believe participation is essential. Not only that, he thinks all 5 of them should attend. From their perspective, while others see the tournament as a proving ground, to the powerful martial saints, it is nothing less than a battleground for energy crystal resources. The bald-headed marshal reminds them that in previous years their military fought for the benefit of the nation's 3 martial saints. Now, with Lu Sheng in the picture, it's their turn to claim what's rightfully theirs. With no objections left on the table, the Central Marshal makes a final remark saying the future god of the military is returning, bringing them a glory they haven't seen in over 2 centuries. It's only right that they prepare a grand gift for his return. Laughter fills the room. Even these old bones are ready to step out and get moving again. Meanwhile, at the peak of the Divine Martial Tower, a man kneels on the ground, asking if Tan Zhongyue is ready to depart. With a faint nod, the answer is clear. Without hesitation, the man behind him pulls out a stack of documents which are the latest information for the person he requested. Tan Zhongyue tells him to leave it and go. The next second, the man leaps from the Divine Martial Tower, floating momentarily before vanishing into thin air. Left alone, Tan Zhongyue flips through the reports, his eyes scanning the news articles and photos of our boy. A quiet murmur escapes his lips.
So, Lu Sheng, you're really alive. Your return is near. Breaking past your limits, perhaps you are ready to step into the realm of martial saints.
A flicker of regret flashed in his eyes. Injuring Zhao Ji while still at the 8th level, he admitted he had misjudged Lu Sheng, but did he truly regret it? For a second, His expression changed, and the answer came quickly. Tossing aside our boy's information, he dismissed the thought, saying there was nothing to regret. Then a surge of powerful energy erupted around him. To him, Zhao Ji was nothing more than a relic of the old era. In fact, he himself was the real deal. He had reached the Grandmaster level at 42, ascended to Martial Saint at the age of 80, and his martial avatar stretched a full kilometer. Compared to him, what was Zhao Ji worth? He was convinced that if he went all out, 5 moves were all he'd need to cut Zhao Ji down. As his energy surged, he murmured to himself, saying how his will was as sharp as a golden blade, destined to slice through all obstacles. No matter how monstrous Lu Sheng's talent was, what did it matter? In an instant, the sky darkened, space itself compressing until he seized it in his grasp. Confidence surged through him, and he claimed that he would be the first to step beyond this planet. Then with a single slash, the cloud above split in two, his sword energy even breaking past the atmosphere. Okay, buddy, dude looks pretty strong. Was he a worthy opponent? Or just another arrogant loudmouth? Well, I guess only time will tell. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a small courtyard. A splash echoed as Zhao Ji emerged from a pond. Behind him, a woman casually asked if he planned on going this time. Zhao Ji heard the sarcasm and asked did he look like he was in any condition to go. The woman merely shrugged, saying she was just asking out of courtesy. Then, with a smirk, as if rubbing more salt on the wound, reminding him perhaps that for years to come, he'd have no share of energy crystals. Zhao Ji gritted his teeth, but swallowed his frustration. Instead, he wanted her to remember to trade with the guide for the martial soul fluid, promising to pay double when the time came. She assured him there was no need to worry. Business like that wasn't something she'd forget. Once she left, the dude was pissed. His palm slammed against the water, frustration boiling over. But deep down, he knew if Lin Zhengyue could bring him what he needed, he had confidence in regaining 80% of his strength within 3 years. With that, he could reclaim Ji Dao's martial school, rebuild his foundation, and slowly climb his way back. He kept yapping to himself, making plans. But let's be real here a second. 3 years? At this rate, our boy would probably be off exploring the universe in less than 1. Anyway, Zhao Ji let out a curse. He couldn't believe Lu Sheng was still alive. But one thing was certain: with our boy's personality meant he would come knocking sooner or later. That was inevitable, and if it came to that, then what? If necessary, he was willing to abandon everything and seek protection from the 2 martial saints. Yet, the more he thought about it, the more unsettled he became. Could Lu Sheng really take his life even under the protection of 2 martial saints? Clearly, no one is here to answer him. Then, shaking his head, he reassured himself, saying no, he wouldn't dare. Still, that lingering doubt refused to fade. His face grew tense as he slowly sank back into the water, muttering under his breath, "He won't do it. He can't, right?" The long-awaited World Grandmaster Tournament, held once every 10 years, was finally about to begin. The world's most powerful forces were converging on a single location, and even the strongest beings on the planet were making their move. This wasn't just a martial arts event. It was the grand gathering of those known as the gods of the world. Meanwhile, on a distant shore, the folks of Loop Seal slowly approached the coastline. Out in the ocean, the waters churned violently, and unlucky sea creatures boiled alive on the surface. From the midst of the steaming waves, a golden figure emerged, stepping forward in deliberate strides. Instantly, the gathered members dropped to one knee in respect. Harold, standing among them, could immediately sense our boy had become even stronger. Yet a ridiculous thought still lingered in his mind, thinking that Lu Sheng once claimed he was only at the 8th level. Yeah, right. If that were true, Harold figured he might as well unscrew his own head and go down to meet the 2 dead martial saints. However, the sheer pressure rolling off Lu Sheng's body reminded him of the guide. Even if he wasn't there yet, he had to be close. Lu Sheng descended gracefully, asking if everything was ready. What surprised him was the people behind Harold. Weren't the top experts of Loop Seal nearly wiped out? It didn't take long for him to piece it together that Harold must have merged the remnants of the other 2 organizations. Harold quickly reported that everything was set, and with that, the group boarded a private jet. Seated inside, Lu Sheng casually toyed with an energy crystal in his hand. After absorbing everything, his immortal cells had reached 278. No wonder higher civilizations went to such lengths to harvest these things. Beside him, Harold was struggling, badly. Sitting next to Lu Sheng felt like basking under the sun while eating hot pot inside a raging inferno. Every breath Lu Sheng took radiated the heat of molten lava, leaving Harold drenched in sweat. Then, out of nowhere, Lu Sheng asked him what Harold thinks of his punch now. Well, that's instantly made the dude panic. Harold's scalp tingled as sheer terror shot through him. Without thinking, he pressed his palms together, desperately pleading for mercy. Turned out, he kept quite a bit of energy crystal to himself, instead of giving it all to our boy after looting the two organizations. Fumbling, he pulled out a small pouch and shoved it into Lu Sheng's hands. Lu Sheng hadn't expected that kind of reaction. He casually explained that he didn't actually mean this, whether he believed it or not is up to him. But since Harold had already given them up, he wasn't going to say no. This was probably another 600 grams in his hand. Loop Seal was definitely loaded, he thought to himself. Harold, on the other hand, was on the verge of passing out. Every second sitting next to Lu Sheng felt like being trapped beside the Grim Reaper himself, which is more than just torturing. Lu Sheng soon realized his own energy was so overwhelming that it was suffocating Harold. He got too powerful too fast, and he hadn't fully mastered his control yet. If he didn't fix this soon, even doing normal things would be a problem. He chuckled at the thought. Imagine trying to kiss his wife, only to accidentally cook her lips on the spot, or the chance of hurting his loved ones just by sitting by their side. He needed actual intense battles, fights that would push him to the brink and force him to refine his control. Last time the guide reported, there were 24 martial saints left on the planet. 3 were already dead or injured, and Harold was out of the equation. That left 20 possible opponents. Would they be enough to truly challenge him? Maybe. If they all came at him together, then perhaps he could feel something. Looking out of the window, he thought to himself, if they still weren't enough, then his only hope lay with the so-called guide. Half an hour passed in no time, and the plane slowly touched down. As the doors opened, Harold introduced their location called Thousand Saints Island, named by the World Martial Association. Lu Sheng chuckled at the ambitious name, noting that they were really aiming high with that one. Then he turned to Harold, asking what came next. Harold explained that before the tournament officially began, there would be a banquet, where martial saints could mingle, size each other up, and most importantly, submit their exchange lists to the association. With that, he pulled out a catalog of available items. Among the offerings were the number 3 Life Soul Nourishing Fluid, which strengthened martial souls and enhanced martial avatars, and the number 3 Life Body Tempering Fluid, meant to refine the martial body, however, each costing 2 kilograms of energy crystals per dose. Everything on the list was exclusively for martial saints, and even the cheapest item required at least 1 kilogram of energy crystals. Lu Sheng clicked his tongue, glancing at Harold. 100 years in the game, and he hadn't even saved up a full kilogram? Harold, clearly embarrassed, hurriedly explained that he had some before, but spent most of it on exchanging items. That, and some martial saints buddies of his, still owed him energy crystals, and he'd collect those and hand them over to Lu Sheng later. Lu Sheng just smirked, thinking that Harold had been alive for way over a century. A guy like that definitely has things hiding from him, so there was no point pressing the issue. But just as he was about to toss the list aside, something caught his eye, a level 10 will protection charm. The description stated that it contained the willpower of a 10th level and could be activated instantly. However, the price was a hefty 30 kilograms of energy crystals. At that moment, everything clicked. This was what Zhao Ji had used. The absurd price tag didn't surprise him, though. Zhao Ji almost controlled an entire country. His wealth was on a different level compared to Harold, who was merely the head of an organization. Who knew how many martial saints had died during the Great War back then? Zhao Ji might have looted quite a few of their treasures. Still, as our boy skimmed through the rest of the list, he couldn't help but scoff. All of this was probably just garbage meant to fool country bumpkin martial saints. The guide was simply dumping leftover scraps from its civilization onto them, knowing full well they'd fight over them anyway. Imagine straight up robbing them 90% and then scamming the rest with garbage items. What a bunch of cheeky bastards. With a cold chuckle, he tossed the list aside. If he wanted real power, he had to leave Blue Star and step into the vast universe. Only then would he truly stand among equals. Before long, the banquet began. He stepped out of the dressing room. He was now completely a different person. Harold, seeing him, says the disguise was flawless. Even though his face had changed quite a bit, he still exuded an aura of divine perfection. Harold tried to butter him up with compliments, but Lu Sheng cut him off, reminding him not to slack on handing over those energy crystals. Harold could only nod awkwardly. The banquet was already in full swing, filled with powerful martial artists from all corners of the world. Soon, he spotted some familiar faces, none other than Dong Shengyi and Lin Wanwan. Seeing his brother-in-law's new look, he figured the guy had probably found his way back onto the martial path, even shaved his head. Was this supposed to symbolize a fresh start? There was another familiar face as well, one of Tan Zhongyue's disciples who had been assigned to protect his family. Not that he had ever needed the girl. Looking around, he also spotted the marshals. He thought they were likely here for the benefit of the other two martial saints, since the military itself had yet to produce one of its own. Lu Sheng glanced at the group of old men, wondering if he should go say hello. Before he could decide, the crowd suddenly erupted into cheers. Someone had arrived. "Miss Fiona is here!" they called out excitedly, also known as the Flower of the Alliance. He glanced in that direction, and for a moment even he was stunned. The girl walking down the red carpet was like something out of a fairy tale, the kind of princess people imagined but rarely saw in real life. The crowd parted naturally, creating a path for her as they eagerly called out her name. But unfortunately the artist seemed to do her dirty because compared to Snowy, Amelia, Yang, Healing Sue, Sophia, and many more, anyway,